Not Convinced by Lady Babylon, Ammon Hillman. Steve Campbell, author of Historical Accuracy of the Bible, first edition. Jesus is a composite character of historical fiction. The biblical Jesus was a healer. He was the Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, William Bankston of his day. The New Testament in English presents him as a healer without the use of drugs or young boys. Ammon Hillman, his YouTube channel Lady Babylon, and the Danny Jones podcast video, Ancient Language Expert, Jesus Christ used children as drugs. Ammon Hillman presents Jesus as relieving the anxiety of knowing he was going to die by using a drug that required the use of a male child or a very young man as an antidote to his drug intake. The biblical Jesus, a son of a God who had exorcised demons, needed an ancient Greek method of using drugs and a male youth to cope with the betrayal by Judas, which would lead to his crucifixion? I am not convinced. By Lady Babylon, Ammon Hillman. Characters for discussion: Apollo, Pythagoras, Asclepius, Apollonius of Tyana versus Dionysus, Medea. Apollo was the ancient Greek god representing the ideals of wisdom, harmony, and purity. Apollo was an important deity for both Socrates and Plato, particularly in his role as the god of prophecy, wisdom, and harmony, which resonated with their philosophical pursuits. However, they did not exclusively venerate Apollo, as their understanding of the divine was more comprehensive and incorporated multiple gods, reflecting the polytheistic culture of ancient Greece. Apollo, nonetheless, stood out as a key figure representing reason, enlightenment, and the pursuit of truth. Asclepius was the Greek god of medicine and healing. He was the son of Apollo and the mortal Coronis, and was also known by the epithet the healer. Asclepius was associated with many powers, including healing the sick, raising the dead, using venom as a healing drug or poison, and prophecy. Asclepius was worshipped in many cities across Greece, and his cult spread throughout the Mediterranean from the 5th century BC. His temples were located in Epidaurus and Athens. Asclepius was often depicted with a serpent wrapped around his staff, which is known as the rod of Asclepius. Asclepius, the Greek god of medicine and healing. Asclepius was the Greek god of medicine and healing. His mythology highlights the positive and divine aspects of drug use. Asclepius was a master of medicine, learned from both his father Apollo and the centaur Chiron, in astrology, the wounded healer. He was credited with the ability to heal the sick, perform miraculous cures, and even resurrect the dead. Asclepius's healing powers often involved the use of pharmaca, medicinal drugs or potions, underscoring the sacred aspect of pharmacology in ancient Greece. His association with the serpent, an enduring symbol of medicine, may reflect ancient knowledge of venoms and their use in healings. The term pharmaca itself embodies duality. It could refer to healing remedies or poisonous substances, depending on the intent and application. Pythagoras, circa 570 to 495 BCE, was an ancient Greek philosopher, mathematician, and religious leader best known for his contributions to geometry, number theory, and the development of a religious and philosophical movement that came to be known as Pythagoreanism. Pythagoras was a key figure in the development of the belief in reincarnation in Greek thought. He taught that the soul is immortal and undergoes a cycle of rebirths until it achieves purification. He advocated for ethical behavior and a life that sought to align with the principles of balance and harmony, both physically and spiritually. The Pythagoreans followed a strict ethical code that included vegetarianism to avoid harming animals, self-discipline, purification rituals, and the study of mathematics and philosophy. Apollonius of Tyana was a first century Greek philosopher and mystic associated with the Pythagorean tradition. He was born around 15 Common Era and lived until approximately 100 Common Era. Known for his ascetic lifestyle and his emphasis on ethical conduct and divine worship, Apollonius became a legendary figure in his time and in later centuries. Various miracles were attributed to Apollonius, including healing the sick, raising the dead, and predicting future events. These accounts contributed to his reputation as a divine man. For both Pythagoras and Apollonius of Tyana, Apollo was the most important god, representing the ideals of wisdom, harmony, and purity. These principles were central to their teachings, which emphasized rationality, asceticism, and a life aligned with divine and cosmic order. Dionysus is the god of winemaking, orchards and fruit, vegetation, fertility, festivity, insanity, ritual madness, religious ecstasy, and theater. According to the available information, the earliest written records of Dionysus worship appear in Mycenaean Greece around 1300 BC, where his name is found on Linear B tablets, indicating he was worshipped during that period. Dionysus, ecstasy, sexual rites, and death. Dionysian cults involved mystical initiation, where initiates sought communion with the god through ecstatic rites. These initiations often included symbolic death and rebirth, representing the soul's transcendence and unity with the divine. Dionysus's worship prominently featured sexual liberation as a form of divine ecstasy and transcendence. Rituals often included orgiastic celebrations, which broke social norms and symbolized a return to primal, natural states. Death and rebirth are central to Dionysian myth and cult practices. The god's own myth involves his death and dismemberment and subsequent rebirth, symbolizing the cycle of life, death, and regeneration. Medea is known as a sorceress and is depicted as a priestess of the goddess Hecate. She first appears in Hesiod's Theogony around 700 BCE. In myth, there is a reference to her using the blood of Poseidon. The blood of Poseidon could be used to enhance Medea's potions, making them even more potent. In one specific instance, Medea uses a potion derived from the blood of Poseidon to transform her enemies or achieve her goals. Symbolism. The blood of Poseidon could symbolize a connection to the primal oceanic destructive forces of nature. Since Poseidon is the god of the sea, earthquakes, and horses, his blood might represent a potent and uncontrollable force that Medea, as a powerful sorceress, could harness for her own purposes. Context and interpretation. Medea's use of such potent ingredients reflects her role as a pharmakeia, a term used in Greek mythology to describe someone who uses drugs, magic, or potions for transformative or harmful purposes. Mystical initiation. Medea was a priestess of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, and likely underwent mystical initiation into rites involving magic, herbalism, and contact with the divine. Her rituals often included invocations and sacrifices, aligning her with esoteric practices. Cult sexual rituals. While Medea's myths do not explicitly involve cultic sexual rituals, her relationships, for example, with Jason, are steeped in themes of betrayal, passion, and manipulation, which echo mythological motifs of sacred or symbolic unions. Death rituals. Medea is infamous for her association with death and vengeance, particularly through poison. She employs ritualistic elements and acts of murder, for example, slaying her own children, aligning her with darker rites of death and rebirth. Pliny the Elder, year 23 or 24 to 79 Common Era, wrote Naturalis Historia. Pedanius Dioscorides, 40 to 90 Common Era, wrote De Materia Medica, a comprehensive 5-volume encyclopedia on herbal medicine and related medicinal substances, serving as a cornerstone in the study of ancient pharmacology. Galen, 129 to 216 Common Era, heavily referenced and expanded Pedanius Dioscorides' work developing the Galenic corpus. There seems to be two approaches. One, Apollo, Asclepius, Pythagoras, Apollonius of Tyana, or two, Dionysus, Medea. Lady Babylon, Ammon Hillman, is heavily, if not fully, weighted to Dionysus, Medea. Wisdom, harmony, and purity with Apollo, Asclepius, Pythagoras, and Apollonius of Tyana is where one expects to find Jesus. Ammon has only found references to the Dionysus Medea approach for Jesus as a healer. I have to question that. The biblical Jesus learned healing by Dionysus, Medea, and Sepphoris. No other healer in the Roman Empire took drugs and had to come down using young men. Lady Babylon Ammon Hillman needs to answer these two questions. Lady Babylon Ammon Hillman likely has used the sources of Pliny the Elder, Pedanius, Dioscorides, and Galen, but have not found the Apollo, Asclepius, Pythagoras, Apollonius of Tyana influences in the Gospel of Mark. Is that factual, Ammon Hillman? Hillman's insistence that Jesus was with a boy in the Garden of Gethsemane. Jewish males are considered to become men at the age of 13 because of a ceremony called a bar mitzvah, which marks their transition into adulthood and the acceptance of religious responsibilities as a Jewish man. A bar or bat mitzvah is a coming of age ceremony for Jewish boys or girls when they reach the age of 12 or 13. This ceremony marks the time when a boy or a girl becomes a Jewish adult. This means that they are now responsible for their own actions and can decide for themselves how they would like to practice Judaism. Respect the culture. Explain why these males, Jesus with the young man in the garden and Paul's boys, were younger than 12 or 13, or you are a fraud. Ammon Hillman, Lady Babylon, Steve Campbell, author of Historical Accuracy of the Bible, first edition.